Okay, we're back.
Hello.
I don't know, it looks like we're having a little bit of a Skype issue there. It keeps freezing up on me, but let's try to get started here. I'm going to share my screen with you.
Oh, it's promising now.
Can you see my screen?
It's loading. It's
Okay.
loading.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, we see you. We see you. Well, that's what he.
Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to get started. Hello, everyone. Today, as part of a Stembridge presentation, I'm going to give you a short presentation on careers in engineering. My name is Rob Lucera, and I have a slide here which gives you a little thumbnail sketch about a little bit about me, just to tell you a little bit about my background. I have over 35 years experience in the engineering industry for both owner-operator companies and also the engineering and procurement construction management firms, otherwise known as EPCM firms. My areas of expertise are project management, program management, quality management, and also process engineering. I have a bachelor's in science and chemical engineering and an MBA both from Drexel. I'm a registered professional engineer in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. I'm also an adjunct professor at Rowan University in their chemical engineering department, in addition to working at Jacobs Engineering. Also a certified teacher in the state of New Jersey in math and a couple of engineering curriculums. I'm also the CEO of a company called Stembridge, which is a virtual network which connects STEM academia with the industry subject matter professionals. And that's one of the reasons I'm here today is basically I'm an industry subject matter professional, and I'm virtually bringing you the STEM academia classroom, the Project Lead the Way classroom, some type of real world industry subject matter, hopefully that will enhance your experience, enhance your classroom experience. In the way of Project Lead the Way, I am on 3 Project Lead the Way advisory boards down here in the South Jersey area. I'm from the South Jersey area. As you can see, I'm from Haddon Heights, New Jersey, which is down around the Philadelphia area. I'm directly across the river from Philadelphia. So I am on a couple of Project Lead the Way advisory boards. Project Lead the Way requires that each school have an advisory board in which is made up of industry members, teachers, parents, and so forth, so that on a couple times a year we meet and we critique the curriculum. I know that this is the first year for your school in Project Lead the Way, so I have been involved with some other schools relative to Project Lead the Way, just FYI. Okay, I did mention that Stembridge, just want to spend a few seconds talking about that. Stembridge is a company which I've developed which aims to bring subject matter expertise into the STEM classroom. So to enhance your classroom experience in STEM, the goal of Stembridge is to bring you presentations such as this one, which gives you some real world subject matter expertise on STEM. So that's the reason for this particular presentation. There's a short video here about what is Stembridge. I'm not going to go into that. Mrs. Smythe does have this presentation, and maybe offline or at another time you folks can take a look at that. I'd rather just get right into the presentation itself. So this is the agenda that I'm going to follow. We already did some introductions. I'm going to talk about what is an engineer, some common engineering disciplines and careers, some alternative disciplines and careers in engineering. One slide on salaries relative to engineering, various schools in the area, some helpful links, and then hopefully have a little bit of time to answer any questions that you might have. But first, we'll start out with a little humor. There's going to be a couple of jokes interspersed in here. It's a little bit of engineering humor. So you're not required to laugh, although that would be nice if you did, but you don't have to. An engineer is asked to prove that 2 plus 2 equals 0. So here we have 2 plus 2 equals 0. We'll start out with that equation. And then we'll write it out. 2 plus 2 equals 0. We're going to factor out the TW. Okay, so if you factor out the TW, then 0 plus 0 equals 0. So if TW equals 0, then 0 plus 0 must equal 0. Therefore, we just proved that 0 equals 0.
We got some laugh.
Okay, is there any laughter?
A little bit.
So, anyway, into the meat of the presentation. What is an engineer? Engineering is actually a Latin word from ingenere, which means to contrive or devise, and ingenierium, which means cleverness. So engineers really need to be able to contrive or devise or create, if you will, and they also need to be very clever or ingenious. So that's interesting that it comes from that Latin word. An engineer applies specific knowledge, math, and ingenuity to develop solutions for technical problems. Designs materials, structures, and systems while considering limitations imposed by practicality, regulation, safety, and cost. So a lot of times when we're developing these new systems, we always bump our heads up against certain limitations, such as constraints, codes, practicalities, regulations, safety issues, certainly cost issues. Cost is never an unlimited factor. I do a lot of work for our clients, and obviously one of their most important things, well, really three most important things they're interested in are cost, schedule, and quality, in addition to safety, of course. So the cost is always an issue when you're doing your project work as an engineer. An engineer is a versatile mind who create links between science, technology, and society. This is a quote here from Steve Jobs, who of course is the founder of Apple, was the founder of Apple. Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. So some of the skill sets of engineers, in addition to technical skills, which of course all engineers need to have technical skills, but more importantly, we all have a lot of good technical skills. But these skills, other skills that I list here, are very important for the engineers because, again, we all have very good technical skills, but not everyone has really good problem-solving skills or analytical thinking, or are not able to work in a multidisciplined team. And all those are very important if you're working in the engineering industry. One of the most important things, and I cannot stress this enough, is the communication skills of an engineer. Unfortunately, engineers are very technically oriented. A lot of times and I am one myself, we don't communicate very well because we're so wrapped up in the technology part of it. Being able to communicate to others in very simplistic terms about what we're doing is very, very important. And it's a skill set that really will come very important and handy to you if you become and move into the engineering field. Innovative thinking, as we mentioned before, is very important. You need to be able to think in an innovative way. You need to be organized. And this also offers you an opportunity for travel and multicultural engagements. As I mentioned, I work for Jacobs Engineering. Jacobs is a 60,000 person worldwide engineering firm. We have offices all around the world. If I go on to jacobs.com and look under the careers tab, there are hundreds and hundreds of job openings around the world that Jacobs is looking for people, not only engineers, designers, scientists, clerical people. So if you like to travel, you can actually travel. If you become an engineer, you hook up with a larger company. If you'd like, you could probably see part of the world on that company and broaden your experience that way. So these skills, as I said, make you a very valuable employee in addition to the very obvious technical skills that you have to have as an engineer. Engineers can work in groups or sometimes alone. So a lot of times I do work alone, but many times as a project manager, I'm working with my team. So you have to be able to work with other people. We're always looking to make a difference in the world. As we know, any STEM curriculum is really there to make a difference in the world. I'll give you a quick example. Right now over in Paris, there's a global initiative going on to try to decrease the greenhouse gas emissions in the world. And the world leaders are trying to come to an agreement on how they can cut down on carbon dioxide emissions, cut down on greenhouse gas emissions, and basically save the world in decades to come. All of those things that they're doing have a relationship to science, technology, engineering, and math. And that's just one small slice of it, but that whole initiative that's going on there now really has a big part of its roots in STEM, if you will. Generally have a lot of passion and energy for what they do in their life, do engineers. Unfortunately, engineers and STEM people in general sometimes are stereotyped as being nerdy or being geeks, but that's not true about all engineers, and me included. We might be a little geeky or nerdy, but actually being in the STEM field is very cool nowadays, and it's a really cool place to be. So think about all these things when you consider your path in career path, particularly in engineering. These are some things that you're going to be exposed to. Here's some engineering facts. Did you know that 2 U.S. presidents were engineers? Does anyone happen to know who they were? I'll give you a hint on one. There was a dam named after him in Colorado. Did somebody say it?
Hoover.
Yes, Herbert Hoover is one of them. Herbert Hoover was a mining engineer. Very good. The other one, I'll give you another hint. He was a peanut farmer before he became president. Say again?
I'm not sure.
No? Okay. Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was a nuclear engineer. So 2 U.S. presidents were actually engineers. Another engineering fact that not many people know is you've heard of the Fortune 500. Fortune 500 is the 500 largest companies in the United States. The most common educational background for the CEOs of those Fortune 500 companies, believe it or not, is engineering. People think, well, it's probably finance or maybe being law or something like that. But if you group the Fortune 500 CEOs and you looked at their background in education, a high percentage of them are engineers, and they're running the biggest companies in America. We also have job security. There's currently a shortage in science, technology, engineering, and math graduates. Therefore, in other words, there's more jobs than there are graduates in STEM. In other words, the supply and the demand is out of balance. That actually works in your favor because, first of all, there's more job security because there's less people to fill these jobs, first of all. And second of all, it inflates your salary because your demand is so high and the supply is low. The salaries tend to rise up, and we're going to look at that in just a couple slides. So I think you'll be happy to see that. Another little joke, just to break things up a little bit, a mathematician, a physicist, and an engineer were all given a red rubber ball and told to find the volume. So the mathematician carefully measured the diameter and evaluated a triple integral to find the volume. The physicist filled a beaker with water, put the ball in the water, measured the total displacement, and then the engineer looked up the model and the serial number of the red rubber ball in her red rubber ball table. Okay, no need to laugh. Engineers are known to have their tables for everything. That's the joke here. So anyway, moving along. Some common engineering disciplines. So civil, these are, I'm just going to scroll through this and get the animation out of the way. These are what you would call the 5 or 6 most common engineering disciplines: civil, chemical, electrical, mechanical, environmental, and industrial. So when you think about engineering or you hear of engineering, many times you hear these 5 or 6 disciplines mentioned because most people go into these types of disciplines. However, with the changing world conditions today, some disciplines are actually becoming more popular. For instance, sustainability and energy engineering. This has to do with energy efficiency and services, alternative sources of energy, plant engineering, and facility management. So as you know, and speaking of the Greenhouse Gas Initiative and conference over in Paris, one of the things they're exploring is how can they use more alternative sources of energy and cut down on the fossil fuel sources of energy. So as you know, alternative sources of energy are solar, wind, actually are starting to harness the current in the ocean to turn turbines, which generates electricity. But the percentage of alternative energy in the world is at a very low percentage. It's in the single digit of percent of the total energy that is used and expended in the world. The goal is to get more people to use these alternative sources of energy. meaning that you need sustainability and energy engineers to do the designs to make that happen. This is going to be a very, very big area of engineering going forward over the next couple of decades. Biological engineering is another big one due to biomechanical engineering being more and more needed. Biological sciences and genetics is a big field nowadays. So that's another, if you will, newer type of engineering. Petroleum engineering has always been big. It's got to do with drilling and production of crude oil and natural gas. However, this kind of works hand in hand with the sustainability engineer. As you're using more alternative sources of energy, you're probably going to need less and less, drilling and production of crude oil because you're going to try to use less and less fossil fuels. But however, petroleum engineers are one of the highest paid engineers for starting salaries of coming out of college now. Aerospace is another big one for aircraft and spaceship and ground control systems. Nuclear engineering actually is making a comeback. One of the reasons is the generation of energy by the nuclear power plants generates very little, if any, greenhouse gases. So nuclear engineering, nuclear power rather, is very efficient. It's very clean. The stigma, of course, that it has with it is, of course, it's very dangerous. However, they have made some very large, substantial increases in the safety of nuclear power plants, and you are seeing some applications being generated for the new nuclear power plants, and the government is approving these. So over the next decade or so, you're going to see new nuclear plants springing up because they're very clean energy source. Ocean engineering is another large area that's becoming more and more prevalent, and of course agricultural engineering, because there's many biological processes and bioenergy and agricultural natural resources that are needed right now. I don't know if you're aware of this, but probably over 1/3 of the people in the world go to bed hungry every night. You don't think of that a lot here where we are, because a lot of that is in underdeveloped countries. But just think about that. There's so much food. I read something yesterday where I think they said that people generally waste 40% of the food that's in their home. They throw it out, it spoils. Well, 40%, it's a large number. However, think about this, that people are starving in the world and they don't have stuff to eat. On the ocean engineering side, this is kind of hard to believe, but the numbers I've seen is that 50% of the people in the world do not have access to potable water. Potable is drinking water is what that means. In other words, half the people in the world don't have water for which they can drink readily available to them. And that's kind of unique in that 2/3 of the world or the globe is covered with water, albeit it's salt water, but 2/3 of the globe is covered by water, yet half the people in the world don't have the kind of water that they need readily available to them. The only reason I'm not trying to bring you down today and talk about things that are not very happy. However, all those things I'm mentioning require engineers, scientists, mathematicians, and technologists to work on so that those things aren't a problem for generations to come. And that's where STEM really comes in on these kind of issues. That's why it's important. By the way, there's also an engineering discipline called sports engineering. I wish I'd known this way back when I was coming up the ranks. Sports engineering is a branch of mechanical engineering. And basically it's for the design and development and testing of sports equipment, lab experiments, computational modeling of sports equipment, some field testing, and working with governing bodies and athletes. Some schools actually offer this branch of mechanical engineering as a discipline that you could study. And I would, if you're interested in sports, kind of a cool thing, you can dovetail your interests with your career and become a sports engineer. Some common technical career paths that you can go with for engineering. You can work for an owner-operator company, as we call it. I've just listed a few of them here, like a DuPont, a Dow, an ExxonMobil. These are what's called owner-operator companies. They actually fabricate or manufacture a product. DuPont manufactures chemicals and technology, so does Dow. ExxonMobil, of course, is oil and gas. General Motors is automobiles. Owner-operator companies. Another type, the type of company that I work for, which is Jacobs, is called an engineering consulting company. We don't make a product. We are a service company. We furnish engineering services. So these are the two main types of companies that you could work for as an engineer: an owner-operator company, or what's called an EPCM company, as I mentioned before. Various industries you can go into are chemical, petrochemical, power, pharmaceutical, and so forth. These are just scratching the surface here, but these are some of the industries you can go into. And typical technical careers, you can work in research and development, you can work in the corporate engineering department, plant engineer if you like to work out in the field, field engineer, a discipline engineer, or you can go into engineering management as well. So, kind of the crux of this presentation in the next couple slides, and these are alternative engineering career options. So what we've talked about so far are the engineering career options that you think and you hear a lot about. But here's a couple of alternative career options if you wanted to do something a little different, but you were interested in engineering. I'll give you a couple of ideas, and maybe it's something you could think about if you're starting to think about college and starting to think about your career. So a couple of them for, let's say you like to help shape young minds. Well, if you're an engineer and have an engineering degree, you could go into teaching. Mrs. Smythe has an engineering degree. I have an engineering degree, and I'm an adjunct professor at Rowan. So we engineers are trying to help shape young minds like yourself by going into the teaching field with an engineering degree. Let's say that you have an interest in the financial world. You could go into economics or finance. I'll give you an example. These are a couple of companies you see here, Price Waterhouse and Fidelity. They use engineers to help them monitor, say, engineering firms. I'll give you an example. Fidelity follows the engineering and construction firms so that they can make recommendations to their clients should they buy engineering stocks or construction stocks or not. Well, who better to monitor and who better to follow engineering and construction stocks and companies than an engineer? So if you had an engineering degree, but maybe you had a minor in, say, economics or finance, you could go into the financial industry instead of the engineering field with an engineering degree. If you like management, you can do what I do for a living, which is project management. I manage a team of people who perform capital project work for our clients, and we develop new processes, retrofit processes for our clients. You can go into other types of management, such as business management, management consultant, all with an engineering degree. Let's say you like to work other aspects of a company, such as strategic planning or process improvement. Well, with a chemical engineering degree, you could go into process improvement area. There's a company called Six Sigma, which deals basically with process improvements, and you can work on helping companies improve their various processes. Let's say you like working in the field or outdoors. You could go into construction management or the civil service, like the Peace Corps, where with an engineering degree, you would be spending a lot of your time working outdoors, working on the construction side of things, or helping people in the civil service field overseas, say, as an example. Let's say you sell yourself a supporting role for project execution. You can go into something called project controls. Project controls is cost scheduling and estimating. Or you can go into sourcing or procurement, which is the purchasing of engineered equipment, all with an engineering degree. Let's say you had a flair or you like to do writing or composing. Many technical writers, and there's a very big need for technical writers, by the way, are engineers or have a STEM background. I mean, who better to write about a technical subject than someone who has an education in STEM? So that makes a lot of sense. Let's say you always wanted to be a lawyer, but you also wanted to be in the engineering field. A patent lawyer probably has an engineering degree, probably has a mechanical engineering degree, probably. But you can be a patent lawyer with an electrical, civil engineering degree, or really chemical, or a lot of different ones. But you would be dovetailing your engineering degree with the law firm if you wanted, say, to be a lawyer. Let's say you like to help meeting new people and help build your company. You can go into technical sales. Technical sales are, for instance, for engineered products like process equipment. I'll give you an example. We have technical salespeople that stop by Jacobs all the time. They're selling pumps. They sell instrumentation. So they were representatives for companies that sell engineered products. many of them are engineers because they understand the engineering industry. So who better to talk about engineered products than an engineer? Okay, a little more humor. An optimist sees their glass as half full. Pessimist sees their glass as half empty. And an engineer sees their glass as twice as big as it needs to be. Is everyone laughing?
A little bit, a little bit.
Okay, all right, good. All right, here's the slide you've all been waiting for. I know, it's all about money, right? Well, no, it's not all about money. And I even hesitate to put this slide in here because I don't want you going into engineering because they're at the top of the list here. You should go into engineering for all of the reasons I just mentioned on all the other slides, that you have a real passion for it and that it's something you're really interested in. However, because of the supply and demand, because of the fact that engineers have many of the skill sets that I mentioned to you in the earlier slides. Remember, we're not just technicians. We have to be good communicators. We have to be very innovative. We have to be able to work with multidisciplinary teams. Well, that comes with a price, and that price is the average annual starting salary for engineers in the United States and it's on the order of $63,000. So, what does it depend on? It depends on what branch of engineering you're in. It depends on where in the country you live. Cost of living in the northeast part of the United States, like where we live, is a lot more expensive than, say, the cost of living in Wyoming. Okay, so engineers around this area are going to probably make more money than if you were an engineer in Wyoming. Just a fact of life. Doesn't mean you have any different skill set. It's just part of the country you live in. This is also the discipline that you go into. Petroleum engineers are probably a little higher than this. Industrial engineers are probably lower than this. The average, though, is in the low 60s. And yeah, that's a pretty good starting salary. Coming out of college, that's a real good starting salary. You can see, and there's nothing wrong with any of these other fields, people who go into computer science, business, and so forth, these are average starting salaries on average. So you see the humanities and social sciences, starting salary is considerably less than someone with a STEM background. And again, it has a lot to do with supply and demand. It has a lot to do with the skill sets that you're expected to have. And so, as I mentioned before, it depends on the location, the disciplines, and also experience level. Well, you might say, well, how can you have experience if it's a starting salary? Well, when you're in college, generally, you might be having an internship. Or if you go to Drexel, they have a co-op program where you'll actually be working part of your time that you're going to school. So you'll be getting some experience. People like Jacobs look at that very heavily when they're looking at new graduates. If you already have a year or two's worth of experience, that makes you a lot more valuable than someone who's never worked out in the industry. And one other thing I wanted to point out to you, and you can see how the engineering and all of these disciplines and jobs are relative to the minimum wage. The minimum wage in New Jersey is about $8.25 an hour. If you annualize that, you're going to be making about 17 grand a year. 63,000 is a lot different than 17 grand. I think you'll agree. Comes with a price. You have to work yourself way through 4 or 5 years of college. It's a lot of hard work. Yes, it is. But if you have a real big interest in it, you're going to make a good salary to start with and work your way up the ladder. You're also going to have probably a pick of jobs. I teach senior chemical engineering students at Rowan. I do get a chance to talk to them. Matter of fact, we hired one here at Jacobs not that long ago. They routinely get multiple job offers. It's not uncommon for a chemical engineer or an engineering or a STEM graduate to be having multiple job offers you get to pick from. Some people coming out of college in some of these other disciplines can't even find a job. I'm not guaranteeing you a job with a STEM degree, don't get me wrong, but because of the supply and the demand right now, you have a better chance of job security and getting a job with a STEM degree than you do with other types of degrees. So this is a huge benefit of the work that it takes to become either an engineer or one of the STEM curriculums. Another thing that we're very lucky about is in the tri-state areas, I call it, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, there are a lot of very good engineering universities. Rutgers, Rowan, UOD, Drexel, Villanova, and so forth. And that's just scratching the surface there. But some very, very good schools. Rutgers, of course, and Rowan are state schools, so they're going to be a little bit cheaper. By the way, Rowan, probably heard about this, just came out with something where if you qualify going forward, starting in the fall, for new incoming students, if you agree to go over the summer, you can finish your degree in 3 years, and the tuition and the room and board for the classes that you take during the summer are free. So just think about that. You basically save, I think it was, they figured it would be $22,000 because you're lopping off one whole year of room and board, and also the tuition associated with those classes in the summer. So you and your parents could save 22 grand and you'd be done in 3 years, which means you hit the ground running in your job a year sooner than most people. And by the way, most people take probably 4 or 5 years to finish. So just think about that. And I'm not pitching Rowan because I work for them as an adjunct, don't get me wrong, but they're coming up with a very unique solution on A, how you can get your degree faster and go out and make more money really quickly. B, how you can save money in your education. As you know, there was just an article in the paper too about student loans and about how the government gives you all this money, and a lot of people are coming out of school with a lot of debt. Well, Rowan's helping you by actually helping you save money. So I wouldn't be surprised if these other schools pretty shortly thereafter follow suit with what Rowan's doing. It's a pretty unique opportunity for you if you're thinking about a state school in New Jersey. Nationally, of course, there's some biggies that you've all heard of, MIT, University of California, Berkeley, and so forth here. Cornell, these are big engineering schools. So they're noted for their engineering curriculum. Very expensive, highly prestigious. I can tell you what I did, and this is back in the 70s when I came out of, I went to a community college for 2 years because I didn't know what I wanted to do coming out of high school. So I went to Burlington County College. They had just started, they had just opened up. I went there for 2 years. I got an associate's degree in chemistry. I decided I wanted to go into engineering. I went to Drexel at night, and I also got a job during the day working in the engineering field. So I was getting experience. I was going to school at night. Not easy to do. However, this company that I hooked up with had tuition reimbursement, and they had full tuition reimbursement, which you don't see a lot nowadays. I got most of my schooling paid for by that company because they had tuition reimbursement. So yes, I did it a little bit what I call the non-traditional way. I worked and I went to school at night. However, it was beneficial for me because I got a lot of my schooling paid for. I got a lot of experience early. And over time, that helped parlay me into the position I am in today. Not only that, I started out at a community college. I know I talked to a lot of people, my children included, they both went to community college. A lot of people say, well, community college, I want a real school, quote unquote. Well, let me tell you something. Those 2 years that you spend in community college, you're going to get all your general education requirements out of the way, and you're going to get them done pretty cheaply because the community colleges are a lot cheaper than certainly any of these schools that you see up on the screen. You get a couple years under your belt, you find out what you really want to do. You and your parents get some, basically, if you will, cheap education. You get your gen eds out of the way, and then you move on to another school and you transfer over. So think about it. Again, I'm not pitching community colleges. I'm just telling you how I did it. There's many ways to do it, but that was the way I decided to do it. These are some helpful links, and as I mentioned, Mrs. Smythe has this presentation. So these are things that maybe you guys could look at offline, but they're just some links that I thought would be interesting to you if you're interested in the engineering field. I'm not going to go into them here, but you can see some of them are some top engineering projects, some list of engineering societies and engineering salary studies and things like that. And that basically is the extent of the presentation I have. I'd like to open the floor up and see if you have any questions about the engineering field or just the STEM field in general.
Okay, yeah, we've got a question. Josh?
We'll call it you first.
They're going to have to get probably a little closer to the microphone. I'm not able to hear, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. You went to Drexel, right? Is that correct?
Yes, I went to Burlington County College for 2 years, and then I transferred to Drexel. The last 2 years of that, to get my bachelor's degree took me 5 years at night. But remember, I was working the whole time during the day. And then after that, I decided to get a Master's in Business Administration or MBA. I went to Drexel for that as well, but that took me 8 years to do. The reason it took so long, at that time I was married, I had young kids. I was basically taking just one course a semester in the evening. Sometimes I would take off a semester. So yes, it took me a long time, but I was able to get most of that paid for, the master's degree paid for by my company as well. I walked out of school with basically no debt relative to my education because most of it was paid for by others. So yeah, going at night is not the easiest thing in the world to do. However, I was able to get a lot of it paid for. I was also able to get very good practical experience along with my education, which made it actually very valuable to me. Any other questions?
Wanna come up?
Can you hear me?
I'm afraid I just barely.
He'll come up.
You gonna tell a joke?
No.
Like if you work in one field of engineering, does that limit you to working with other projects that are in other sections of engineering, like in other aspects of it? Like,
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, it really enhances that. I'll give you an example. Here, I'm a project manager. I have a chemical engineering degree. I'm working as a project manager. On my team are chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers, electrical engineers. We all work together. They all work on the project and cross over in the other disciplines. Being able to work in a multidisciplinary environment as an engineer is a very important and valuable trait to have. I'll give you another example. My son is a civil engineer. He graduated from Drexel as well. He's working as a piping engineer, even though he has a civil engineering degree. So you can cross over very readily. It does not lock you into one particular type of job. Now, being a chemical engineer, let's say eventually you wanted to go into civil engineering. I mean, there's certain skill sets, obviously, that are very different from chemical to civil, as you can imagine, or civil to chemical even. But what I would encourage is that you do learn as much of different disciplines as you possibly can, and don't limit yourself to just one discipline. That makes you more valuable. I'll give you another example. At Rowan, and I'm pretty sure they do this at Rutgers and other schools as well, from the freshman year, you're basically put in a group with other engineering disciplines. So they're getting you in college to work as a multidiscipline facet or multidiscipline arena right from day one, because they understand how valuable it is for you to learn about other engineering disciplines, not just your own. So I hope does that answer your question, sir?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Speak loudly.
What does your job consist of on a daily basis?
I'm sorry?
What does your job consist of on a daily basis?
Okay. Tell you what, I'll go you one better there, since we have an extra minute here or two. Pretty sure I have this at my fingertips. I gave a project management presentation. Not sure if this is it or not. Yes. So I gave this project, I'm a project manager. I gave a project management presentation to Cape May Technical Skills not that long ago. So I'm a project manager for Jacobs Engineering. So here's what I do. I manage multidisciplinary teams of engineers and designers to execute capital projects in this office, we work mostly in the refinery and chemical field. So we work with clients in this area that have refineries and have chemical clients. For instance, I'm doing a large project now for a company called Honeywell. You've probably heard of Honeywell. You probably think of them maybe as an instrumentation company, but Honeywell is actually a very big chemical company. And we're developing a retrofit project for them for one of their plants in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We're taking one of their existing processes and we're expanding it for them so that they can make more product. They have a product called a refrigeration. It's a refrigerant. It's a substitute for what's called Freon. You may be a little bit too young to remember, but in refrigeration systems, a chemical called Freon was used. Freon was found to inhibit the ozone layer of of the atmosphere and degrade the ozone layer, so Freon was basically made illegal. Honeywell and other companies came up with different refrigerants that were what's called, ozone friendly, or, green, if you will. Well, this plant in Baton Rouge makes that refrigerant. They can't make it fast enough. There's a very big demand for it, so they want to expand their capacity. The project that we're doing is enabling them to double their capacity. The project will be done probably in October, November of next year. They'll be online. So as a project manager, I think I mentioned this before, I'm accountable for what's called the Big Four. I mentioned 3 of these, but safety is always number 1. We have to make sure that everything we do is done in a safe manner so nobody gets hurt. But it has to be of high quality. We certainly have to meet the client's schedule, and they're always interested, of course, in the budget. What's it going to cost? I also have client interface and business development responsibilities. I work closely with the client, make sure the client's needs are being met. We're doing what the client asked for. I also help out with this office to try to develop new business for them, and I go out on business development calls to try to get new clients. This is a typical organizational chart. I blacked out the names, that's why it's a little messy, but you'll get the idea here. Here's the Honeywell project manager. They, of course, are in charge of the entire project. This is me right here, project manager. I also function as the quality manager for the job. But you can see I have project engineers working directly for me, and underneath those project engineers, I have leads, they're called, in all of these disciplines. These are support disciplines: procurement, estimating, project controls, and so forth. These are your technical disciplines: process engineering, piping engineering, electrical engineering, instrument, civil structural, mechanical. I have leads in each of these boxes. Each of these people have people working for them, designers and other engineers. And they all report up through the project engineer, they report to me. So my responsibility is to manage all these people and make sure they're all moving in the same direction so that we can get the project done on time, for the amount of money we said we were going to do it, of the highest quality, and safely as possible. I mean, in a nutshell, that's kind of my job, is to manage these people from a technical basis. Here's some pros and cons of what I do. Some of the pros are it's an opportunity to create an execution plan from scratch and implement it. One of the things I like about project management is you're given a project, but you're the one that's got to figure out, well, how am I going to execute it? How are you going to do it? And then you get to actually go and do it. So that's what I kind of like about it, is you get to manage your own plan and implement. It's kind of neat. I like to try to make something from nothing. It's just something I like to do. Project management gives you that opportunity. I get to meet a lot of new people. I work in a multidiscipline environment. You saw the disciplines I work with. And I have to be honest with you, after doing this for 35 years or so, the pay is pretty good. So, but I put in a lot of work. You can see my credentials. I went to school at night. I have a teaching degree. I've been doing this for a couple decades. You can make a pretty good living out of doing it, I can tell you that, because we're in high demand. The drawbacks or the cons, I say that I call it, you're the man or woman. In other words, if things go wrong, it's on you. And believe me, things do go wrong. As you can imagine, with all those people reporting to you, all those disciplines, daily basis, there's always a problem. And you're the one that's got to answer, well, what are we doing about it? And when things don't go well, you're the one that has to stand in front of the room and answer to people about that. Could be very uncomfortable. Also, if things are going well, though, you get to take credit for it along with your team. So one of the cons is if you don't like being put on the spot, probably project management's not for you, because you're on the spot. You're the point person. It's generally kind of a high-stress job, and it's not necessarily a 40-hour-per-week job. I'll give you an example. We're working with one of our what's called high-value offices, and they're located in India. So we have an office in India that we're working with to do part of this job. One of the reasons is the labor over there, while they're technically oriented people, is about half of the labor cost that it is here in the United States. However, the India office is 10 and a half hours ahead of us. So I was on the phone, as an example, at 6 o'clock this morning because I had to have a meeting with them. 6 o'clock in the morning is 4:30 in the afternoon for them. So, I was at work early this morning because as a project manager, that's just what you do. Sometimes you work early, sometimes you work late. Sometimes if you have to leave for a doctor's appointment at 2 in the afternoon, you just leave. but it's expected that you'll get your work done. You don't have to punch a clock. Sometimes it results in long hours, though. This will give you maybe just this is the last slide here. It's a career path in this arena. It's best to start out in one of the engineering disciplines so you get a sense of project execution from an engineering standpoint. I just mentioned this to the other gentleman before. Learn about as many other disciplines as possible. Very important. Don't hesitate to spend a year in a support group like quality or project controls. It gives you a good perspective of the bigger picture if you want to be in project management. Field experience is really almost a must. Get to know how things are built. Remember, we're doing this in an office. You really need to know how do things really get built. Spending a year or two as a field engineer or a plant engineer is an excellent idea. Gives you a great perspective on things. And then move into project engineering. Before you become a project manager, you're going to work in this area called project engineering, which I showed you in the org chart. One more back. This is the project engineer right here. You'll basically work your way up from the disciplines into the project engineering level. Before you become a project manager, you generally work your way up this way. So you get an experience on how all this works before you're overall, accountable for the entire project. So to the person that asked, I hope that answers your question. I might go off on a tangent a little bit, but that kind of gives you an idea of what I do on a day-to-day basis.
It did, thank you.
Sure. I have maybe just a couple more minutes before I'll have to go for another meeting. Are there maybe any other wrap-up questions?
Any other questions or just okay. We have two more. Hopefully we can get them in.
Okay,
Josh?
sure.
You said you went to college undecided. What influenced you to go into the field here?
You said you went into college undecided. What influenced you to go into chemical engineering?
Well, two things. One is my father was a chemical engineer. So I kind of had an idea that's probably what I wanted to do. But coming out of high school, I didn't want to commit to a 4-year college and then find out, I really did. So what I did, that's one of the reasons. The other reason is I went to a community college where they didn't offer a chemical engineering curriculum back then. They do now, but they didn't back then. So I went into their chemistry curriculum because it was the closest thing they had. And that kind of reinforced with me too that that's what I wanted to do. So those were really the two things. And I kind of took it like one step at a time. That's why I went to a community college first. It kind of reinforced my desire to do that and do what I wanted to do. And so those are really the two reasons why I went into what I did. Another question?
Yeah, we have one more.
Sure.
Did you ever work on any projects that involve nuclear engineering?
I have not. I do know that many people in this office, this Jacobs office in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, is 250 people work in this office here. Many of the people some people who used to work here used to work for a company called Bechtel. Bechtel was a very big nuclear engineering company. I myself have not done any nuke work. It's a very specialized area. Many people here have. We don't do that type of work at this office. Jacobs Engineering as a whole does not do nuclear engineering. Most time when you see companies that do that, they're very specialized because you have to be certified. The requirements that you need for nuclear engineering are very stringent by government standards, and they should be. As you can imagine, the designs that you need to do have to be certified. They have to be quality tested to a very high level. So not any old company can do nuke work, as we call it, or nuclear work. So no, I have not personally done nuclear work myself, no. Other questions?
I think that's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Mrs. Smythe, if there are any follow-up questions, if you'd like to email me them, I'll be more than happy, or at a later date, if there's so many questions, if you'd like to just engage, and what we can do is just chat without presentation, just talk, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Sure, thank you. I'll keep that in mind. Oh, they're interested in the Rowan information you gave us. We'll look it up. We can...
Yeah, if you go to Rowan's website, it's right on the homepage.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, everyone, thanks.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
Okay.